Law questions are one of the most common types of logical reasoning questions, but a lot of students still don't know how to approach them. And logical reasoning in general has become a lot more important now that logic games is off the LSAT. Today I'll walk you through 10 of the most common flaws that appear in LSAT logical reasoning. First, for those who don't know me, my name is Steve Schwartz. I've been teaching the LSAT since 2005, and I personally increased my own LSAT score from a 152 to a 175. Now, in LSAT flaw questions, your job is to identify what went wrong in the argument. These questions are asking you things like, the argument is most vulnerable to criticism on which one of the following grounds, or what is the major error in the reasoning. And so your job here is to find the conclusion, find the evidence, analyze the relationship between the two, and figure out where the argument went wrong. Again, today I'm going to walk you through 10 of the most common flaws that appear frequently on the LSAT logical reasoning section. If you can become more familiar with these flaws, if you can better recognize the patterns, you'll be able to solve them that much more quickly and accurately. First, one of the biggest LSAT flaws is a sampling flaw, where the argument draws the conclusion from an insufficient or a biased sample. So for example, after asking 5 people at the gym, everyone agreed exercise is the most important part of staying healthy. Therefore, exercise must be the key to good health. First off, they asked 5 people. This sample is way too small. And secondly, they're asking people at a gym. People at the gym probably are more into exercise than the average person. It's a biased sample. Additionally, are they qualified to speak about what is the most important part of staying healthy? Might be better to ask a doctor. So in short, this argument is flawed in a number of different ways, but they all relate to the fact that something is off about the sample. Either it's too small, it's biased, and it's not necessarily an expert group making the claim. Sampling flaw. Secondly, we have ad hominem flaws. These flaws attack the person rather than the substance of their argument. So for example, if we had an argument saying, don't believe Alex's argument about recycling, Alex doesn't even recycle at home. That's flawed because criticizing the behavior doesn't address the validity of the argument itself. Whether or not someone personally recycles does not have any bearing on the logic of their argument in favor of recycling. You can criticize them for being a hypocrite all you want, but we've got to look at the argument about recycling on its own merits, which this argument doesn't even get into. So secondly, again, was ad hominem. Third flaw here is necessary versus sufficient conditions, confusing the two. In this flaw, they're confusing what's required for an outcome with what is sufficient to guarantee it. So for example, if someone is a licensed doctor, they must have completed medical school. Chris completed medical school, so Chris must be a licensed doctor. So of course, completing medical school is necessary to become a doctor, but it's not sufficient to guarantee that they gained their license. So for example, did they pass the USMLE, the medical boards? Are they up to date on any credentials or continuing education related to their license? Medical school is key, of course, but there may be other things one has to do in addition in order to be a licensed physician. So again, number 3, confusing necessary versus sufficient conditions. Fourth flaw, circular reasoning. Circular reasoning is when the argument's conclusion is just restating the premise without adding anything new. This is bizarre because they're kind of saying the same thing twice, but this does in fact happen both on the LSAT and in real life. For example, quote, this book is popular because it's the best-selling book right now. They're saying it's popular because it's the best-selling. That's saying the same thing twice. They're confusing the conclusion and the evidence and conflating the two. The argument's not providing any real evidence, but they're just restating what they already said. So again, circular reasoning, number 4. So the fifth flaw here is the flaw of equivocation or ambiguity, using the same word with 2 different definitions over the course of the argument. So for example, Lee is fast, so they must excel at solving problems quickly. So fast might mean fast like a very fast runner. That kind of speed is totally different from being able to solve problems quickly, confusing mental speed with physical speed. Those are 2 different things. They're exploiting an ambiguity in the way that we use the word fast in potentially different ways. If you look up the keyword in the dictionary, you'll see a primary definition, a secondary definition, maybe even a third or tertiary definition. And so if you're going to use a key vocabulary word, you have to use it consistently over the course of the argument. You can't play that switcheroo game with the term. So again, number 5 here is the flaw of equivocation or ambiguity. The 6th flaw here is confusing part versus whole, assuming that's what's true of part must necessarily be true of the whole as well, or vice versa. So for example, if we say that this team has the best player in the league, therefore it must be the best team, that's confusing a part of the team, an individual player, with the team as a whole. So having the best player doesn't guarantee the team as a whole is going to be the best. Maybe the other players are terrible, or even if you have an all-star team of a bunch of great players, they wouldn't necessarily play well together. And so having a great individual player doesn't mean the team as a whole is going to be equally good. The player may not be representative of the whole. So again, number 6 here, confusing part versus whole. Number 7 here, the flaw of absence of evidence. So this occurs when an argument assumes something is true or false simply because it hasn't been proven otherwise. So for example, quote, there's no evidence that this new diet is harmful, so therefore it must be safe. Just because we don't yet have the evidence doesn't mean the evidence does not exist. In other words, a lack of evidence doesn't prove something is safe. It just means we don't yet have enough information. So again here, number 7, the absence of evidence flaw. Number 8, appealing to emotion or authority. This is 2 flaws here in one, but either way, they're both making a flawed appeal. So if you are appealing to emotion, that means that you're trying to get pity points, basically, and appealing to authority may not be valid because if the person's expertise is not in the appropriate area, that would be irrelevant. So an example of an appeal to emotion would be, this charity must be effective. Just think of all the people who would suffer without it. So even if this is emotionally compelling because they're pulling on your heartstrings about the suffering people, that has nothing to do with whether the charity is effective or not. 9th flaw here is an internal contradiction. This is when, strangely enough, the argument contains 2 different statements that are mutually exclusive or go against one another. So for example, this product is the best on the market, but no one should waste their money on it. If the product is the best, you would think they're going to say that you should use your money for it. It wouldn't make sense to say you shouldn't waste your money on it if it's also the best. These 2 claims are incompatible. They go against one another, which makes the argument incoherent or makes it nonsensical. So again, that's an internal contradiction, number 9. Finally, the 10th flaw here is correlation causation, confusing a correlation to indicate causation when it doesn't necessarily do so. So for example, if we say sales increased after the new manager was hired, so the manager must be responsible for the increase. That could be a coincidence. There could be some third variable at play here. We don't know that the sales increased because of the new manager, just because the new manager was hired around the same time. It could be a coincidence. There could have been a seasonal trend, which makes that causal link unsupported. So again, the 10th flaw here is a correlation causation flaw. Now, these 10 flaws are all classic logical fallacies. If you can familiarize yourself with flaws like these, you'll be in a much better position to handle flaw questions when they come up. Of course, there are other flaws here that I didn't cover, and some flaw questions also do not relate to classic logical fallacies in particular, but rather simply exploit some sort of gap or assumption made in the argument. So while I want you to familiarize yourself with these 10, don't assume that's all you've got to do. You want to expose yourself to the wide variety of patterns that are tested in LSAT logical reasoning. I would recommend doing a large number of flaw questions since they are one of the most common types of logical reasoning questions. And of course, at LSAT Unplugged, we walk you through everything you need to know about flaw questions, logical reasoning in general, and the LSAT in general as well through our private one-on-one coaching programs, our live small group classes, and our on-demand video courses. We create for our students a personalized day-by-day study plan walking you through everything you need to know to support you on your LSAT journey. If you'd like my help, you can check out the links below to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to support you on your journey to a 170 plus. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.